I know what you're thinking, med device. You think this has never happened to anyone else, but I'm here to tell you it has, and it happened in the industry that you like to make fun of. I'm Mark Hope, and I'm the Value Analysis Whisperer. I help companies get their products approved. This is Sutures and Cents, where we talk business to clinical, clinical to business. Ryan Pistone is my right hand consigliere, and if it's done right, Ryan was involved. If it was done poorly, it was probably because I was too impatient and didn't listen to Ryan. And we are Sutures and Cents. And this is a very special episode of Sutures and Cents. You remember when we were kids and the lame TV show would come out and this is a very special ER. Okay. Yeah, remember that? How lame that was? Then you'd watch and go, is that really all that special? Or is it just sweeps week? Yeah. Look it up. Back in the day when sweeps mattered. So I'm going to tell you a story of how pharma figured out how to sell to committees 30 years ago, long before med device, who has to do it now and struggles with it, had to figure this out. So here's the deal, right? So I'm going to tell you this story. Back in 1997, I was a young, skinnier, younger and skinnier value analysis whisperer. Actually, didn't even know what value analysis was at that point. But I was actually a hospital rep for Pfizer, well-known company in pharma. And I had been a territory rep for 2 years and called on doctors' offices and small hospitals. And it was right in the middle of the big R&D go-go 90s where new drugs were coming out. And we were launching a new drug. No, not that one. We were not launching the erectile dysfunction drug. My division got the broad spectrum antibiotic. Thankfully, actually. And so after being a rep for 2 years, I was fortunate enough to be promoted to be what was called an institutional healthcare rep or a hospital rep. Is what they were kind of known as. And hospital reps were reps who called on, at the time, hospitals, not health systems, because the health systems really not the way they do today. They did not exist the way they do today. But our job was to call on academic centers, any place that had a residency program, and promote our drugs. The concept was hospitals were big users of certain types of drugs, IV antifungals, IV antibiotics, cancer medicines, right? But we were also there to teach the residents about disease states and our drugs so that when they ended up going out and becoming an MD or DO or out in the outside world, they were familiar with our products, right? Probably, again, sounds familiar. I'll bet to a lot of med device reps. So our job was to get our products, our new products, particularly ones that would be used in hospitals, like my IV antibiotic, and it was an IV and PO by mouth pill, right? And it was a broad spectrum in a class of drugs that there were already two versions of something similar, same class of drug. And these hospitals were not really all that interested. They're like, we've already heard of it. We don't even need it. And we were taught by Pfizer that we had to get our drugs approved by this Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee. Sound familiar? P&T committees, they were called. And their job was to come up with a formulary for drugs that were approved in that hospital that the physicians there could use, whether they were on staff, as part of an academic center, or private practice who came in and rounded their patients, were admitted to the ICU or to the med floors, and they would come in and write orders. This is probably right around the time hospitalists became pretty common in these facilities. But you had to get it approved by this committee. And this committee was somebody that, they didn't tell us when they were meeting. Most times they didn't want reps knowing who was on the committee. You see the parallels. And we had to call on people in different specialties, but also some of the business people in it. And a lot of the business people were in the pharmacy side. Now, there were PharmDs, doctors of pharmacy, very smart clinically and very smart business, right? Because they had to understand it. Because what a lot of people don't realize is, yes, the operating room and med device is an enormous part of the budget. But if it's not first, it's second. Pharmacy. Pharmacy is an enormous big ticket item in hospitals. So believe me, it's kept an eye on very closely, more so than I think med device has in my experience traditionally. So this was a committee that made decisions on what drugs were going to be available in their hospital for their patients. And it was a formulary. And if your drug wasn't on formulary, you couldn't get used. So our job was to go in and not sell. Our job was to get it approved and on the formulary. And so this became our job. But here's the difference. Here's what Pfizer taught us that I just didn't realize. This has been a big learning for me, that I didn't realize I had this training and that most people do not. It seems. I shouldn't, I'm not making a completely general statement. Pfizer told us, here's how you go get this approved. You go call on everybody that might use it and everybody that's on that P&T committee, if they'll see you, and you got to make a presentation to them as to why your drug makes sense for their patients and to be on their formulary. And it was cost effectiveness or replacing other drugs or did things that the other drugs couldn't do that made it easier. And trust me, this drug that we launched ended up having some problems, sadly, but it was a heck of a drug. And when you got people to sit down and actually look at it, first of all, clinically, it was brilliant. But once you get the PharmDs and the business people look at it, you were able to tell them, hey, we're going to be able to take people from IV to pill sooner, and you're going to be able to eliminate some multi-drug usage where they were saying, hey, we didn't realize we're using 2 and 3 drugs in these complicated community-acquired pneumonia. And we could come in and say, yeah, you hang one bag of Trovan, you're taken care of. And then as soon as the patient can handle it, you can put them on pills. Your episode of care costs plummet, right? But we had to explain this. We had to talk to a lot of different people, many of whom didn't want to talk to us. They're like, oh, we already got another one of those on. We got 2 of those on formulary. We don't need a third. Not interested. It's too expensive. Don't want to look at it. Don't care about it. Because our competitors had sort of laid some groundwork. And we called on these people on the P&T committee. And we didn't ask anybody. If I talked to the head of pulmonology, who's very influential in these hospitals, and they were like, I'd really like this. We would say, don't ask for it yet. We're building consensus. We're creating groundswell. We're counting votes because we don't want to submit and request this on the P&T committee until we think it's already going to get approved. Now think about that. That's not what Med Device does. Med Device says, champ, you like it? Request it. Tell them this. And I'm going to tuck in behind you and you just get that bad boy approved. It doesn't work anymore. We were the exact opposite. We built consensus. Don't ask for it. Don't worry. It's not approved, but if you like it and you're interested in it, would it be all right for us to tell other people? Because we're building groundswell. Be amazed at how well it worked. One of the funny things was I had a partner, tag team partner. He and I had these 5 hospitals, and we ended up getting it approved in each one of them. And 4 of them up front told us, we're never approving that. It's okay, right? We all get over challenges. It's not like we were some superstars. But we called on people who would never even use antibiotics, but were on the P&T committee because radiology, for example, would need a lot of chemicals for their treatments. Oncology had a lot, but they weren't necessarily using antibiotics. And we would call on these people. And I had a radiologist actually say to me, why are you even showing me this? Like, I don't use antibiotics. I was like, well, doc, here's the reason. You're on the P&T committee as I understand it. And this is going to come up eventually. It's going to be requested because all of these people want it. And I had a list. I would say, we want to make sure that when you're there, if you have a question, you already have it answered. You're familiar with it. And hopefully you'll give it a thumbs up. And she was like, who's requesting it? And I showed her the list. She's like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, it'll get approved because these people like it already. They'll get it approved because they're influential. And because the next question she asked, so what's the deal with this thing, your drug? She didn't even know the name. I was like, well, here's the deal. It does this and it lets you this and that and cuts down on multi-drug. And she's like, oh, okay. So it's actually going to save us money, huh? I'm like, yeah. Yes. She's like, okay, good. You got my thumbs up. basically. So I walked out and called my partner. I'm like, I just called on the radiology person on the PNT. She's never even going to use it, but we got a thumbs up. And then when we requested it, we picked a highly influential, strong advocate from oncology in one facility, and we got it approved. But it was because we already knew it was going to be approved, because 3/4 of the people in the meeting already thought it should be approved, and the 1/4 that didn't know or didn't want it got overruled. Because we're selling to committees, folks, right? And Pfizer taught us that. Make a list. Who's against it? Who doesn't care? Who's for it? Go call on them. But under no circumstances, and these were the lessons they taught us, under no circumstances do you request that this be submitted for PNT approval until you know it's already going to be approved. We were counting votes. Makes you work hard up front so that when you topple into the end zone and get it approved, it's because of all the work you did, not because of something magical said at this meeting that you weren't there for. Because we were at none of these meetings. We were never at PNT committee meetings. But we're selling to a committee. It's a political thing, small, lowercase p, but it's political. And everybody needs to understand what this is. And if there's wins for them in it, to make sure they get a win. But that's what Pfizer taught me, and that's what pharma did. And they were brilliant at getting products approved. They had great drugs, but trust me, they had great competitors, and they had plenty of people saying, we don't need it. We don't need another one of those. Not interested. Sound familiar? You can do this. I'm trying to help, and I will help, because I'm Mark Copeland. I'm the Value Analysis Whisperer. I help companies and their reps get products approved. And this has been a very, very special Sutures and Cents. I hope you smile when I say that. And next week, I'm going to tell you how we got it on insurance plans, and you're going to see even more parallels. See you next week.